let's say you've done a buyer seller meeting, with
Uh-huh.
buyer A and then buyer B and then buyer C and then finally buyer D writes an offer, accepted, and you're in due diligence. But some of the conversation with buyer D didn't include everything that you had with buyer A, B, and C. Do you take all of those notes and provide them as part of your due diligence or disclosure package?
No. So I have part of my process is that when I take a listing, I do a video interview with my sellers, and I have a topic list. It asks them about the background and history of the business, and their about their clients, and their marketing and sales tactics, their staff and management, and employees, and so forth. And then we segment all that down by topic. And so um, every buyer has that gets past, like I said, they, initially they have limited access to a blind sim and blind financials, but then because 85% of the people will opt out at that point, it's like, well, that's not really a good fit with my or with my acquisition criteria. So at that point, if they opt out, they don't really have a need to know who the company is, right? They just don't, and they don't need the business name. So to try and maintain confidentiality, I do two versions of the sim, a blind sim that's more brief, and then a regular sim. And same with the financials. I'll just redact the company name off of the financials, and or tax returns. Like tax returns, I don't put the full set in there. I might put, let's say it's a S corporation. So I'll put the 1120S, and the if it references statement 1 or statement 2 as far as other deductions go or other expenses, then I'll go ahead and get the federal statement. And so I might have those 2 pages of the tax return in, and I'll redact those out so there's no name and no EINs, and put that in with the blind financial section. So I spend a little more time up front to try and protect certain things, certain, confidentiality and things. Um, that second level, inside the sim of the second level, when they do have the company name and identity, then I have a page towards the end that says video interview with a seller. And there's a link there that goes to the video interview page. And they click on that link and they come up with a page, and it's got the list of topics, and they can look at the topics and they can say, oh, I'm interested in, their growth. I mean, one of the things is, what would you do in terms of growing the business? Well, let me look at growth. Okay. So they click on that, and then, that might be a 2 to 6 minute video of the seller's response when I was asking them about what they would do to grow the business, or what they would recommend a buyer to do to grow the business. And then they can bounce around any topics that are of interest to them. They can read that. So it does a couple things. First of all, any buyer that gets up to the point where they're looking to make any kind of offer or submit an LOI or whatever has had access to the same videos. So all the buyers have all that same information already. Then the
Wait,
second
so
thing I do is I compile a Q&A.
Mhm.
And so if there's specific questions that come up in any of those interviews that I want to compile into a Q&A, I can do that, or I can have ChatGPT or something else do it for me, and then put that Q&A document into DocSend, so that anybody that has access to it, so that these same people have access to the questions and answers, but not the entire transcript of the meeting. I don't give any buyer the transcripts of the meeting, except for the buyer except the buyer who actually attended the meeting. But even then, I don't usually send the transcript out.
so you give potential buyers access to actual video conversations with the seller?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow, that would be really
it's
powerful sales.
awesome. It's awesome because here's what happens.
Hmm.
Normally, let's say you have 200 buyers that inquire on a business. And of those, probably 160 of them knock themselves out. Not a good fit. And then you got 40 more that are going to want that second level access. And then they go in and, you know, some of those are going to opt out. You might have, you know, 20 or 30 that go through and see the actual, the broader version of the sim and more of the financials and all that, say, yeah, this is just not such a good fit for me. So now you've got maybe 10 or 15 left that are still very interested in the business. The seller doesn't need to have the same conversation about the background and history of the business and the management, the employees and all that with 15 people. And I don't have time, quite honestly, to be on 15-hour-long Zoom meetings to have the seller repeat the same stuff. So we just record it. And that way the buyers can all get it. They can, the beauty is the buyers love it because they get a lot more information about the business than they do from the sim. And quite frankly, people don't like to read today. So you don't want to have a very detailed, it makes no sense to do a super detailed sim because nobody's going to read it. And then the other thing is, so now they know about the business. Now they're saying, yeah, I'm still interested in this. Now I want to have an actual meeting with the seller. So then we set up a Zoom meeting with the seller. Buyer feels like they already know the seller because they've already seen all these videos. For the seller, it's the first time they're meeting the buyer, but that's okay because the buyer is now asking questions that matter. They're asking questions about the operations of the business. They're asking questions that are more in depth and more detailed. And so now the seller feels like the buyer understands the basics of the business and has done their homework at least. So it really works well for both sides.
That's awesome. So how long have you been doing that with
I've
the
been doing
videos?
that, I don't know, maybe 2 years now.
Oh, okay.
A year and a half to 2 years. Yeah.
Tanya,
Yeah.
which platform did you use for the video? Which tool did you use?
I host the videos actually on Vimeo because I have an account out there. And one thing I like about Vimeo is you can add a video, you can upload a video and make it so it's not searchable. It doesn't show up in any indexes. And then not only that, but you can lock it down so it can only play from whatever domain that you tell it it's going to play from. So that way it just, again, it goes back to trying to maintain confidentiality and security for the business owners.
Oh, not
So
the
yeah, so I
regular.
host them out on Vimeo, but then and the web page that I put up that, you know, links to all of them is again is not indexed, or, you know, we've got things out there that request that it not be indexed, and it's not something that you would find. It's not on my, you know, LA Business Pros website. It's not on any normal website. And if you don't have the specific link to the page, if you somehow end up going to the homepage just says, you know, you don't belong here if you don't have a link.
Oh.
So, you know, it's everything there is very specific.
Oh, so
And
you do not upload to the YouTube? No, you don't.
not this. I mean, crowd call and all that we upload to YouTube, but no, the business owner interviews, I don't put those on YouTube.
What type of cost is that? Is that just the cost of a website? You must also have quite a bit of storage there. Like,
No,
what's
I
your
mean, the videos themselves are stored on Vimeo, and Vimeo, I think, runs like $240, $250 a year. I don't know. It's not a huge expense. I've had it for, I probably had an account there for 10 years now. I don't know.
Oh.
As far as the websites go, my VA puts them together, and my assistant puts them together, and I have an account out on SiteGround. SiteGround is a web host. You can get an account out there where it'll host multiple domains. So I probably have, I don't know, maybe 20 different domains that are out there in SiteGround right now that I use for different things. Like all my mentee training, all the recordings that I do for my mentees of Monday morning trainings, those are all out there on SiteGround. Or they might be in Vimeo, but I think they're on. Anyhow.
So just a basic web hosting. It's not anything
correct.
more than a basic website would be. Okay.
Yeah, and it's only one page. I mean,
Oh,
literally each video interview is only one page with a specific link that I can, that I can put into the sim, and it's got the 15 or 20 different topics that we've discussed, and it will, and like I said, if they click on it, then it's going to go out and get the response to that. So my assistant takes the video interview that we do over Zoom, right? And just segments it out by topic and creates shorter videos that respond to each of the topics or each of the questions, and then links it into that page, builds that page.
so you have a different page for each business that you have listed?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah,
one
because
website with different pages?
so it's one domain that has
Mhm.
different pages, but there's no menus. If you
They're
don't
not
have the link
collected.
to the
Yeah,
page, then you're not
right.
getting there.
Right.
So
It's just a different landing page that you can only get to from
yeah,
that link. And
right.
I get you. Okay. Yeah,
Because if
that's
somebody inquires
awesome.
about a manufacturing company, they have no business looking at a fitness company that I happen to be representing, right? So just because they
Right.
signed an NDA for one business doesn't mean I'm give them access to everything else.
Of
So
course.
yeah.
And the sellers, I assume that you just tell them up front that you're going to do it, and they're happy to have their videos
Yeah.
segmented. Do you
Most
show
are.
them?
Yeah.
Do you show them before, like, for them to proof, like, oh, I said some
Mhm.
stupid things. I don't want buyers to see that.
Yeah, I send them a link to the videos as soon as we have the page up and available, and we have a
Mhm.
link to it. Then I send the seller a link and say, "Here's the page that your video interviews are on, and feel free to take a look. If there's anything you absolutely hate and want to re-record, then we're happy to do it for you. But most of the time, it's just very conversational, and it's not really anything." I've
Mhm.
had one person wanted to re-record 2 segments, and I've had one person that just said, no, I don't want to do the video interview. And it's like, okay, but what that means is that you're going to have a lot more conversations with different buyers that are interested in your business that are going to ask you the same thing that you already answered for the other buyer on the last call. So it's up to you, but I mean, you can't force people, right?
Mhm. What about your buyer videos? If you have one with buyers, that person decides not to do it, but they ask really good questions. Is it possible to add those to the collection?
Yeah. Yeah. Then I'll go ahead and add those to the Q&A. And if this, like in the one case where the seller decided he would not do a video interview, then what happened was buyers would send me questions by email, and I would send them over to get responses, and then I compiled them all in one document. I would just keep adding to the bottom and adding to the bottom, adding to the bottom. So pretty soon, you've got 20 different buyers that have asked questions. You've got one document that's questions from buyers or frequently asked questions, whatever. You just keep adding them in. And that way the different buyers all have access to the same information.
I just want to say,
There's lots of ways to do this stuff. I mean, there's lots of ways to do things, and you just figure out over time, you have to figure out what works best for you and what's going to work best for your clients. And so some of the stuff you just figure out, I don't know. But the video interviews has really worked awesome for me, and I highly recommend it. So yeah, John.
I just want to say that this is brilliant. The fact that you're sharing this information with us is just, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Why would I not? Why would I not? But I can tell you that it's funny because I've had 2 meetings with a business owner recently with 2 different buyers, right, that have been past that second level. They've seen all the videos and everything. Both of those buyers thanked the seller for doing the videos.
Oh,
While we were on the call, it was like, oh, I just want to tell you those videos were so great. Thank you so much for doing that, because it really gave me a better understanding of the business before I got on this call with you.
Can I just add one thing? I
Yeah.
feel like when you do those, it becomes more intimate, and the
Yeah.
buyer really feels like they know the seller, right? And I think that just it saves so much time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they already get a sense of the personality.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have like a huge personality clash or something like that, the buyer kind of can tell already, because they're already getting a sense of who that seller is and what they're about when they're watching those videos. So I don't know.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot that they could definitely glean from a video interview for sure, of what type of person, mannerisms, speech,
yeah,
of how they probably interact with their employees, and how they're probably, and make a lot of assumptions, but maybe, some truth in these assumptions.
yeah. And I think that they can judge authenticity.
Mm.
So, if you are in those video interviews, like I said, it's very conversational. I mean, literally the topic list starts with, tell me about the background and history of the business. That's always the first topic. And that's where we start. And so they start talking about how they got into the business and what drove, what things motivated them to get the business going and so forth, or whether they bought it. Maybe they bought the business, or maybe it's a franchise and why they were interested in the franchise. So all of those things come up. But also, you can hear when you're talking about the staff and the employees, are they happy? What is their tone of voice? Because thing about writing is you can't hear tone. And so you can't hear, hey, this person's really excited about the team that they've built. Because if you understand and know that somebody's excited about the team they built, that tells you right away that one of the things one of the things that's important to them is to make sure their team is taken care of. So they're going to want a buyer that's going to come in, that's going to treat their people right, that, and that's just something that's important to them. And so if you have somebody who comes in and everything is about how can they cut costs, how can they cut here, how can they cut there,
Right. Private equity.
Can they replace any of the employees that are making a little more with people who are making a little less so they can cut? And to a seller, that's just like, oh my God, I have this great team and you're going to destroy it. So they don't necessarily want to see that, right? But yeah, I think the videos tell a lot about the seller.
But Tanya, did you edit the video after, or you just upload everything in your conversation?
No, I mean, it gets segmented. We don't do a lot of editing. So the seller's response is going to be pretty much a seller's response, but it's going to be split out. So instead of, like last week, I did a video interview with a seller. The whole thing took almost 2 hours.
Oh,
Almost 2 hours.
Wow.
So we're actually breaking that down, but it's going to be like 20, 24 different topics. And so each one of those is going to be obviously a much shorter video. And if we find that there's areas that we think are duplicated, we'll just kind of skip those. So,
but I thought you said only 2 to 6 minutes. How come it 2 hours?
yeah, I mean, sometimes, but it really depends on the seller and the topic, because there are some topics that might take a longer time to explain. And
Right.
for example, like even think about, if a business has 20 employees and you're asking them about the management and the management team and their staff, and what does each of the staff members do? Not each person, but each category, who manages, how many people do they have under them? What are, and what are the roles that these people play? And as they start describing some of the jobs and job descriptions and what the people do and all that, I mean, sometimes that's going to take long. If you have 2 employees, and it's going to be, 2 to 6 minutes. If you have 20 employees, it might take 20 minutes,
That's
it
true.
could take longer. So
That makes
just
sense.
depends.
Thank you. Yeah.
But sellers, my experience has been just to let them talk, because if they're answering a question, just don't put a time limit on them. Just let them talk. Let them answer the question fully, because that's what the buyer wants to hear anyways. And the buyer can always click out. I mean, if they've gotten enough from the first 2 or 3 or 6 minutes of the video, they can just bounce. They can click stop and move on to the next. They don't have to listen to the whole thing.
That's true. Thank
So
you.